Hello, good morning and welcome. This is Sunrise Daily on a Friday morning. I'm Ayo Makinde.
Have I ever been so happy to see Friday? Good morning, Nigeria. Welcome to Sunrise Daily. I'm Maokwe Ogunyusuf from Abuja in the Federal Capital Territory.
Is there anyone you know who does not love Friday morning? Even though it only holds just what? Maybe just 1 or 2 nights of sleep?
Well, 2 nights is better than nothing, I'll take it.
But it just so happens that you fall into one of those industries that, you are like in the medical profession or in the military or in the police and all those. You just have to come to work. But let me not get started with you this morning. Let's start with the Guardian newspaper. And it's concerned about the Electoral Amendment, the Electoral Act Amendment Bill. Concerns as hope dims for amended electoral bill. That's the lead of the Guardian newspaper this morning. And why is that? Maybe you'll find the details in the riders. Buhari departs Abuja for Turkey Africa Summit, returns on deadline day. That's the lead of the Guardian newspaper. Guys, this one is from yesterday. Lawmakers proceed on Yuletide recess. Turkey trip stalls National Assembly leaders' last efforts to save amended bill. And fate of Ekiti Osun governorship polls hangs over stalemate. What does this mean? Find all of the details in the Guardian newspaper. Continues on page 6. And right under the picture you see there on the front page is Nigeria at war, SBM report reveals. What does that mean? The writers will tell you something or two. 964 security agents, 3,071 non-state actors killed in 1 year. Certainly not good news. Nigeria, a failed state at war, Northern Elders, Middle Belt Forum, slam Buhari. All of that you find on page 6 of the Guardian newspaper this morning. Markwe.
Well, I'll be doing the Daily Trust for you, and it has Aya's favorite parastatal on the front page. Auditor General uncovers multi-billion naira fraud. Well, fraud is in parentheses there in National Assembly. That's what they have on the front page. 3 billion naira in Senate, 5.5 billion naira in House. It's shocking. Lawmakers are breaking laws. That's attributed to Rafsanjani. You have this lack of trust, major challenge in COVID-19 vaccination. That's the Sultan speaking right there. And if you were to look just beneath the nameplate of the paper, gunmen kill father, 2 sons in Benue. Why APC should postpone February convention attributed to Kalu. Perhaps that's Ojus or Kalu. You might want to confirm that. A number of Kalus in the country, but perhaps the most prominent one as we speak today will be Ojus or Kalu, at least in the political sense. Explain sources of your wealth. Adebanjo tells Akonde Tinubu. That's also on the front page. We've been seeing the elder statesman taking on, reacting to the book published, or written and published by former governor of Osun State, Bisi Akonde. And yesterday he addressed a press conference, and part of it is what's on the front page. You might want to pick up a copy of Daily Trust and see just what that story is about. Insecurity, Bichi Emirate holds special prayer today. That's also on the front page for you. Let's leave it there for Daily Trust newspapers.
Nigerian Tribune, which is leading with Adebanjo Oyinlola Bode George, descend on Akonde. What does that mean? Well, the riders will give you a pointer. I sold houses, land, took loan to build my Lekki home, says Adebanjo. Akonde paid 800 million naira contract sum for government house in full in his last days in office. That's ascribed to Oyinlola. Akonde's book contains fallacies, should be consigned to the dustbin. As according to Bode George, stories on page 2 Under the picture you see on the front the front page, conflicting court orders, NJC bars erring judges from promotion. Wow. Now that is, talk about biting, right? Appoint new heads of court, 54 judges for 16 states. That one is on page 20. So many others on the front page. 36 governors to review planned privatization of 10 generating plants, critical national assets. The story is on page 25. It's definitely something worth taking a closer look at. Back removal of fuel subsidy. That's on page 25 of the Nigerian Tribune this morning.
And if we're to take a look at News Direct, they have this: NDDC funding, controversy trails recovery of $5.6 billion, IOC debt by federal government's committee. I take that again. Controversy trails recovery of $5.6 billion IOC's debt by federal government's committee. That's what News Direct has on its front page. As oil firms dare NDDC allocate equity to host communities, NDDC justifies accountability with electricity for 5 Ondo LGCs in darkness for 14 years. Experts call for probe. A pretty interesting headline that News Direct has on the front page. If you're able to pick up a copy, all well and good. Axis Bank holds court-ordered meeting on scheme of arrangement for restructure. That's also there. 10th anniversary, TED Fund sponsors 30,000 lecturers for postgraduate studies. That's on the front page. DMO offers 250 billion naira sukuk for a subscription as debt rises to $92.6 billion. Well, usually we know that when the debt comes, and offered to Nigerians, it's usually oversubscribed in many instances. That's because people know that government will certainly pay. But you might want to see the details of the story on the front page of Nigerian News Direct. Let's leave it there for the paper.
Outrage as Nigeria loses 964 security agents in 1 year. Definitely something to give one concern. How 322 police officers, 642 soldiers were killed in 1 year. That's according to a report. Says 1,989 bandits, 973 Boko Haram members killed within the same period. Notes 290 cultists, 129 vigilantes, 100 IPOB members also killed. Killings show government failure to protect Nigerians. That's ascribed to ACF. We're in very difficult circumstances, ascribed to Northern elders. Nigeria at war with itself, on and on and on. All of that, all the riders you see on the front page. And it's all packed there. Definitely something worth looking at. Beside that, the picture you see there, reps to FG. Explore options to bring down price of cooking gas. The question then will be, what are the options? Find the details of the story on page 35 of the Vanguard newspaper this morning. And one other headline states to clear all outstanding pensions after fuel subsidy removal. What does that mean? Find the details on page 8 of the Vanguard newspaper this morning. The back page still has sports. Raw Raps NFF says, I'm coach with most non-paid salaries. That's what you have right there. Details on the inside pages. NFF to reintroduce code of conduct for Super Eagles and Falcons. Find the details in the Vanguard newspaper, the Vanguard sports pages this morning. That's the Vanguard newspaper today.
Let's take a look at New Telegraph. They have this one, My Participation. That's the book. My Participation is the title of the book, written by Bisi Akonde, who is a chieftain of the All Progressives Congress. My Participation generates fireworks in Southwest. That's what you find on the front page. As Adebanjo, Oyinlola, Bode George blast Akonde. So I sold houses, land, took loan to finance my Lekki home. That's according to Afenifere leader. My predecessor dishonest, not prudent. That's from ex-Osun governor. We've intervened. Everyone will cease fire. Find out who's speaking. It says YCE. Who are they? You might want to see the full details on page 5. And if you look at this one, Obasanjo, why I'll never support Yoruba Nation. That is also on the front page of the paper. And look at this. Declare state of emergency on food. Reps tell federal government. Decry terrorists' imposition of tax on farmers. Okay, that's a very disturbing story on 27. Pioneer status. Federal government grants 3-year tax holiday to 8 firms. 16 others get approval in principle as 28 file fresh applications. So you have all of these stories on the front page of New Telegraph. Let's leave it there for the paper.
Independent has this one. APC February convention uncertain as crisis persists in states. That's what you have on its front page this morning. Convention in February may lead to implosion. Kalu warns. What does that mean? The details continue on the inside pages. Under that picture you see on the front page, states steering committees to oversee payout of $800 million to the poor. Well, you may want to find out the details of that on the inside pages this morning, and several others begging for attention. And right above the nameplate, NJC bars 3 judges from promotion over conflicting ex parte orders. Let's hope this can really do something to ensure that at least we begin to sanitize the judiciary, which has also decided to do something right now to deal with certain issues that we've been having in that sector. Well, that's the much of the papers that we can take this morning. But while still at that, though, that one of the major issues making the news is concerning the resident doctors. You would, of course, be aware that the president has directed that the withheld salaries of doctors be released by the finance ministry. What does this mean? And what does it mean for all of the outstanding issues with the resident doctors? Let's speak with Dr. Godiya Ishaya, who is president, Nigeria Association of Resident Doctors. He joins us virtually this morning. Thanks for joining us, Dr. Ishaya. Want to give us an update exactly what is indicated in this announcement by the Minister of Labor and Productivity?
Well, thank you very much, and good morning, and viewers. Thanks for having me. Since we suspended our strike sometimes on the 6th of October 2021, we have been following up on some of the issues which were still work in progress as at the time we suspended the strike. And these issues, as they were, included the non-payment of the August and September salary, which we have given an acronym WAS. It was one of the reasons why the strike had to linger for the period of time it lingered, because when we commenced the strike, we tried to get the federal government on the negotiating table, but they opted for a court settlement. So in the process, the strike lingered. And when we come in on board, we pleaded on our members that they needed to suspend the strike and give us a chance to be able to interface with the government and look for amicable way of solving this impasse as they were. And after 3 days of tete-a-tete with our members, we were able to convince them, and they agreed to withdraw the strike. So one of the things that we got the commitment of the Honorable Minister for Labor and Employment then was that we are going to continue all negotiation, and all negotiation included our withheld August and September salary, which we have followed through. We have done that with advocacy and collaboration with the Nigerian Medical Association, in particularly the president, Professor Innocent Achanya Otobo Uja. And he has been playing the fatherly role, making a lot of calls. And I've been in Abuja since then, following up on it and making a lot of oversight on the progress and implementation of the agreements that they were signed as at that time. And that is what culminated to what we saw yesterday. During the discussion, when we started initially, the federal government told us they had withheld salaries for Johesu workers and also ASUU. And we made it clear to them that whoever salary have been withheld, we will take it up and follow it up for all those workers whose salaries are withheld and continue to pursue it until all withheld salaries for workers have been released. And I specifically want to, at this juncture, appreciate or thank Mr. President, the President of this country, President Muhammadu Buhari, who has graciously given us clemency together with the members of the joint health sectors who also salaries were withheld. And I also want to particularly thank Senator Dr. Chris Nwabozi Ngige, the Honorable Minister for Labor and Employment, for his understanding and continually being on the table to negotiate, which led to what we witnessed yesterday. Also, permit me to say thank you to Governor Zulum Babangida, the governor of Borno State.
Well, I'm very sure that we'll still have him back, just to get a clearer picture. But just to be clear, this is what Dr. Chris Ngige, the Minister for Labor and Employment, said. Apologies for that. We definitely will bring you that track. We needed to give you the precise words of the minister for those who may have missed it hitherto. Now, Dr. Ishaya, thanks for being with us this morning. So the question then would be, this is how far the conversation has come. The strike was suspended, not called off, not terminated. Where are we with all of the agreements that government signed with the NARD? What's the latest on that one? And what's the assurance you can give us that with the developments going on so far, there will be no need for doctors to go on strike again?
Well, thank you very much. As I said, we had made significant progress. Some of the issues are still work in progress, but with this development, I can say that we have taken a very big leap into our negotiations and implementation of those agreements with the federal government. The remaining issues that are still lingering, though, the remaining issues that are still lingering are those issues of the removal of the House officers from the scheme of service, which we believe would continue advocacy, collaboration, constructive engagement. We are going to get all the issues resolved. There's also issue of the court case, which is still in the court, even though as at the time suspended the strike, it was agreed that the federal government was going to withdraw the court case immediately, but the court case is still lingering, even though discussions have gone very far. In order to get the issues out of court and continue negotiation on them. Still, the hazard allowance, which is still under discussion, but we, on our part, have submitted our final position on it. We are waiting to see the response of the government to that regard. This hazard allowance is very, very important to us because just 2 days ago, we lost about 3 or 2 of our colleagues at the Dalatu Arab Specialist Hospital, Nasarawa, due to Lassa. We believe that the hazard allowance we are earning is not enough to even take, to be able to procure medication for us when we come down with these infectious diseases. This, our colleague died due to no fault of theirs, but trying to attend and save a life of a pregnant woman who came in bleeding after giving birth, and it eventually subsumed their life. And it's exactly the reason why we are asking that 5,000 naira that we have been hitherto enjoying as a hazard allowance is not tenable anymore. It has to be reviewed in keeping with the realities of the cost of medication and other products that we need to take care of ourselves whenever we come down with these deadly diseases.
Well, most certainly so many issues to handle, and it's gratifying to know that at least significant progress is being made. Let's just hope, as you have said, that there is good faith on both sides, so we don't have to find ourselves in the same fate as we did before. Dr. Godiya Ishaya, President, Nigeria Association of Resident Doctors, thank you for your time this morning.
Thank you very much, and thanks for having me. Good morning, sir.
Good morning. Well, just to be clear, we'll take a short break, but before that, this is what the minister said.
As a first step, Mr. President has approved last week, and I now have the authority and letter directing the Minister of Finance to release the funds of the resident doctors for September and October 2021, which was seized in conformity with the law. In the same vein, the approval covers also members of the JOHESU, Joint Health Staff Union, who went on strike in 2018 for 3 months. After the first month, they did it for March, April, May. After March, when they couldn't come back, we asked that their pay be suspended. This is in tandem with the ILO principles at work. You have a right to strike, but the employer has a right to stop your remuneration. On the side of ASUU, we also gave them a revitalization fund for 40 billion early this year for revitalization of the university system. And in the MOA, we agreed that they should get another revitalization this year. And by last July, August, the money for revitalization was paid to them for the university system that were entitled to that. 30 billion was paid. Last week, 22.127 billion was also released to the university system for the unions or workers in the university system to benefit in consonance with the MOA we signed in December 2020. The altercation going on now, and for which ASUU is asking their unions to union branches to vote on, is that a lot of them, number one, don't know that we have paid this quantum of money. Maybe it has not gotten into the account of the people, the persons involved. But I expected us to educate their people and let them know that this is what has happened.
Directly, and you just heard from one of the resident doctors now on the situation with trying to ensure that doctors are happy, especially in this season. However, there are health concerns that usually comes with not just the season, but also associated with the dry season in general. That when I mean the season now, I don't mean the festive season, I mean the weather. When it enters the dry season, there are a few health concerns that come up. We know that that's usually the season for Lassa fever, something that we usually see around December to January and maybe into February thereabouts. So far, so good. We understand that this year we've seen about 434 cases of Lassa fever and 80 deaths recorded already. Just in December, two people, a medical doctor and a pregnant woman are reported to have lost their lives owing to this illness. But if we were to count from January this year to about now, we have about 434 cases with 80 fatalities. And so there'll be questions as to what are we doing to ensure that every time the season comes, we're able to stem or nip in the bud just before it becomes a full-blown flower tree. It's not the kind of flower anyone wants to bloom. How do we nip this in the bud to ensure that Lassa fever does not spread? We have with us this morning Chioma Danwafo, who is an epidemiologist and incident manager, National Lassa Fever Technical Working Group. She joins us via Zoom this morning. Good morning, Madam Danwafo. Thank you for joining us on Sunrise Daily.
Good morning, Omoigbe. Thank you for having me.
Well, it's disturbing already. Well, even though, yes, we hear that, from the beginning of the year is when we're looking at these figures. But if you're to look at just what has happened now, it looks like we're not yet prepared for the season as well, especially when we think of health concerns that could spring up. How would you rate our level of preparedness, given that we've already lost 2 lives already?
Thank you for that question. So at the NCDC, we have a dedicated technical working group whose responsibility is to coordinate the Lassa fever response in the country. And like you actually mentioned, Lassa fever is a disease that has been with us over 50 years and counting now. And we have the high transmission season that spans from November up until about May. That's the dry season, when we record about over 80% of the cases in the country. So what we do at the NCDC, before every high transmission season, we send out alert letters to the state, reminding them that this is the Lassa fever season, and that they should be able to, intensify surveillance activities, intensify risk communication activities, so that the populace will remember that if you have symptoms of febrile illness, it could be malaria-like symptoms, that it may not be malaria, it could be Lassa fever. So to have that high index of suspicion, not just among Nigerians, but particularly among the healthcare workers, because Lassa fever is a disease that is transmitted via human-to-human contact, which is like the secondary mode of transmission, but the primary is transmitted from rodents to humans. That's rodents that are infected with the virus. When we come in contact with the food or drinks that have been contaminated with their urine or feces. So it's very important that healthcare workers have that high index of suspicion and always adhere to infection prevention and control measures so as to prevent any form of healthcare-associated infection, which we just had now. On this note, I would like to convey our sincere condolences to the families and to the friends of the patients and the healthcare workers that we just lost to Lassa fever.
Well, it is very sad indeed. You say that you write, you alert the states. Do you get a response from the state? Is there a way to assess the level of preparedness after the letter has been written?
So when we write these letters, we also follow up because the Public Health Department at the Ministry of the Health is responsible, and we have key focal persons that we interact with. We have meetings with the state epidemiologists, reminding them of the need to be prepared. We also pre-position response materials to the state, like the medication for the management of Lassa fever and other personal protective equipment that is needed for the response. So we follow up to ensure all these measures are implemented at the state level. But for healthcare workers to have an index of suspicion, the state has to be on top of it. The Health Management Board needs to sensitize their healthcare workers to be on alert and always to be on the guard.
One of the things that is a bit worrying is the case fatality. So far, so good. We're seeing a case fatality of about 18% already of the number of people, if not more than that, infected. I mean, 80 people dying out of 434 certainly is a source of concern. Is it that medical personnel are I don't know, they don't have such high... I think the question is, what is responsible for the high case fatality?
So for the high case fatality, I'm looking back at what we had in the past. In the past 10 years, we're having case fatality rates of about 30–40%. So that had been continuously declining, and now we're at about 18–19%. Our goal is to have this case fatality rate reduced to 1 digit. That's why we have developed the Lassa fever, the Lassa fever strategic plan that spans across 5 years, which we will be launching soon. But for the high level of mortality, this will be attributed mainly to late presentation to the treatment centers and also a low index of suspicion. Because for Lassa, if you do not initiate treatment within the first 1 week, the prognosis is likely to be poor. So that is why we keep advocating for that high index of suspicion. If you treat for malaria within the first 3–4 days and the patient is not responding, please start thinking Lassa fever. And we've also seen comorbidities of Lassa and COVID. Now is the COVID high transmission season too. We are seeing high number of cases of COVID. So it also rule out COVID and then rule out Lassa fever. And there are also chances of comorbidities of the two infections. So we tend to look out for both diseases now. And to add that this is also the CSM season. So we have an integrated approach to response. As much as we are responding to the pandemic, we have technical groups that are also looking out and coordinating simultaneously the response of other infectious diseases, which season is now.
Well, there are a few benefits that have accrued as a result of COVID. At least we know that I think a few more states now have capacity to be able to test. We understand that before now, or before COVID, pre-COVID, it used to be that, only a few centers across the country could test for Lassa fever. But we understand that there are now more centers that could do this testing. How has this improved the detection rate, if at all it has?
Yeah, so the The Lassa fever laboratory network initially was just 2 laboratories that were testing in country, and this was currently scaled up to 7 laboratories and counting, because we also had the process of activating more labs. At the beginning of the COVID pandemic, what we did as a country was to leverage on those existing molecular labs that were testing for Lassa fever to be able to diagnose COVID. And as it stands now, we have all the states having COVID testing laboratories. So this is also what we want to do now, to leverage on these COVID labs to be able to activate more labs that can test for Lassa fever and improve the turnaround time of the results, so that once clinicians send a request for samples to be tested, this result will come in within 24 hours. And medication can quickly be initiated, and this will in turn reduce the case fatality rates. So we have leveraged on the gains of Lassa fever to be able to fight the ongoing pandemic, and we're also leveraging likewise on the gains were made for COVID-19 for Lassa fever. IPC, infection prevention and control, is also one aspect of this response that capacity has been built a lot. So we have activated, there have been lots of capacity building across board for healthcare workers, and infection prevention and control has improved. But unfortunately, we still have 1 or 2 nosocomial infection, and we keep preaching and advocating to healthcare workers to please protect themselves and protect their patients by adhering to infection prevention and control measures, because it could be Lassa fever, it could be COVID. You never can tell what you're dealing with. It may not always be malaria and typhoid.
Well, I sincerely hope that our health workers are listening to you, and that they do develop this very high index of suspicion, because it's very sad to lose any one of them, and it's sad to lose any Nigerian, but you know, it's even more depressing if you're losing people who have been trained to help save lives. I'm wondering now, as we go into the season, Lassa fever, we know, is a very preventable disease. We know that usually, oftentimes, people try to take advantage of the dry season by spreading things, especially food items, outside. That practice is still not changing. I don't know whether the NCDC is having any engagement with state governments to see what alternatives, because if illnesses are preventable, I mean, there's no need for us to be back at this every year. Is there any initiative being, thought of to see how we can, stem the very incident or incidence of Lassa fever in the very first instance?
For prevention generally, the response we have to the Lassa fever outbreak is the One Health approach. So this means that we are working closely with our sister ministries, our Ministry of Agriculture, our Ministry of Environment, in this fight against Lassa fever, because there's a lot for them to do in respect to prevention. For agriculture, they have their LGA and their state focal persons whose responsibility is to ensure that environmental sanitation is maintained. Because when the environment is clean, the rodent interaction with human will be reduced. And for agriculture, for Ministry of Agriculture, issues around food safety and food processing also comes in here. So like the spreading of food on the ground where this is exposed to the rodents to contaminate them, and then when human beings consume it, they can come down with infection. So we are working closely with Ministry of Agric and Ministry of Environment to ensure that Nigerians are sensitized, and that food safety and food processing measures are also top-notch, what it should be. This has been a key challenge. This has really been a major challenge for us. That's why we have the One Health Technical Group at the national level, where the key stakeholders are present and have been working together for this response. And in deployment of the national rapid response teams that also support the state level, we also try to include colleagues from agric and environment to work with the state teams to ensure that this happens. Environmental sanitation is implemented and that food safety measures are also in place.
Well, madam, it's cheering to know that at least from the NCDC website, CITREP reports on Lassa fever specifically has been ongoing virtually every week. Well, let me say almost every week since 2007. And that is actually quite gratifying. But the latest report has this image that says every state, including FCT in Nigeria, just as you can see, is one way at risk or the other. Of all the ones that are not green, there's been one negative case reported in all those states. One confirmed case in the places where there are, at least one confirmed case in the places where there are green, and the red dots show the severity in some states. Now, if you also look at that diagram, you see that there is high prevalence in Ondo State and in Edo State. And the highlights of the report says 84% of cases are from Edo, 44 in Ondo, 35, beg your pardon? Yes, exactly, 35 in Taraba. And so one is wondering, how is this going to be contained in a way that it doesn't spread further? Now, the reason for the question is this, madam. My colleague asked you the other time because it is the season that these things happen. However, it is also a season where people travel. So in terms of prevention, what are the things that people need to know? One of the things that we've also found out from research is that people may carry this Lassa fever virus and not even know about it, not show any symptoms. So what are the things people should prevent themselves from? What are the things people should protect themselves from as they travel home for the Yuletide?
Our advice to Nigerians is to always keep your environment clean at all times. If you have holes in your house, please block them to prevent these rats from gaining entrance. This is the festive season. There'll be a lot of celebrations, lots of eating, and so the environment is likely to be littered with leftover food. So we should try to keep everywhere clean, prevent the rats from coming in, cover your dustbins, and store your foodstuff in rodent-proof containers. So that is containers that are well covered so that this rat will not have access to them. And please do not dry your foodstuff on the floor. That way you're exposing them to contamination with the feces or the urine of these rodents. And bush burning is also one activity that displaces this rodent from their natural habitat and to the human habitat. So we discourage any form of bush burning this season. And above all, we should always practice good hand hygiene. Always wash your hand with soap and under running water. And if you notice any sign of fever, sore throat, body ache, please visit the nearest health facility. We discourage any form of self-medication. If you go to the hospital and malaria is ruled out, the health facility, the clinician will also start thinking Lassa or COVID. And once any of this is ruled out, then other diagnoses can be made, other differential diagnoses can be made.
It's also interesting, madam, that in that same report, the last report on Lassa fever from the NCDC, it also shows the age demographic of the people that are most affected by this. And it shows that men are affected as well as women within their productive ages. And so is there any specific reason for this?
So for the age distribution of Lassa fever, we know that all age groups are at risk. None of the age group is spared. And for gender, there's really no reason why we're having for now, for what we know, why we have a higher number of cases among females, there has been some speculations that the fact that females are more are caregivers, so they're more prone to human-to-human transmission. But then we have an ongoing epidemiological study currently in the country and in other 4 West African countries that have the highest burden of Lassa fever in the country, supported by our partner, CEPI. So that will help us to understand really the epidemiology of Lassa fever in the country, because there's still a lot of unknowns around the disease. So this epidemiological study is a 2-year study that will help to understand the key epidemiological indices of this disease, and it will also help us with the oncoming clinical trials for the Lassa fever vaccine.
Well, it is heartwarming to know that a vaccine is being developed in that regard. However, we understand that, for this particular fatalities, which we've just recorded in December, that they're going to be contact tracing. How far is the NSCDC directly involved in that? And if they are, how far have they gone?
Yes, NCDC is directly involved in the contact tracing. We have deployed teams to the 2 most affected states. So the state that is affected is Nasarawa State, where we have unfortunately lost 2 healthcare workers and a pregnant woman. And however, this case is sought for care in the FCT. So there's ongoing contact tracing in Nasarawa State and in the FCT. We have identified all the contacts. They have been categorized, and some have also been placed on post-exposure prophylaxis. Some have successfully exited the 21 days contact without any symptom. So that's currently what we are doing. And if any of them shows any symptom, we quickly collect sample, get it analyzed, and then find out what the result is. But for now, we haven't gotten any secondary case from this particular cluster.
You just confirmed, initially we had been told that 1 doctor died alongside the pregnant woman from whom he was caring. But it seems you're confirming to us now that the 2nd doctor, whom you understand was seeking care in the FCT, has finally passed on. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct. Unfortunately, we lost the 2nd doctor day before yesterday. Well,
really sad indeed. I'm wondering, do we have... I know that ideally, what we would seek is for no one to lose it, no one to even contract the disease in the first instance. But given the prevalence of this disease, the fact that almost every year now we have cases of Lassa fever, and usually they're in their hundreds, do we have a target? Is the NCDC, beg your pardon, NCDC setting a target for this year to say, look, this is what we've recorded so far. We do not want to go beyond this level. Is there any such target?
So, like I mentioned, we have a strategic plan, and our aim is to reduce the case fatality. And in reducing case fatality, it's very important that we identify cases early. Given that we currently do not have a vaccine for this disease. So the primary focus is to prevent that transmission by sensitizing the public to keep the environment clean and also prevent rodents from coming in contact, and for healthcare workers to adhere to IPC. But like you said, if we cannot prevent, we should also detect early. So once anyone comes down with infection, we should be able to detect it early, initiate treatment, and have a good prognosis so that all the Lassa fever cases can recover from this disease. So our goal is to reduce the case fatality rate while we work at getting a vaccine that is effective. Safe and effective. So we are trying to see how the index of suspicion can be improved. The number of cases that we have this year has significantly declined compared to the previous years, which is a bit worrisome for us, given that there has been no significant intervention. So there has been speculation that this could be as a result of the ongoing pandemic, which has affected probably the reporting of the cases. So what we do is to keep sensitizing our surveillance officers to be on the lookout of those cases, because we do not want to miss a case. Missing a case would translate to ongoing community transmission, or even healthcare facility transmission that could lead to deaths among the setting, which we do not want. So if we're able to detect a case early, we can quickly isolate those cases. We have treatment centers and isolation centers across the country where those cases can be quickly isolated and well managed.
So how I mean, it's a good thing that, you know, you have a high index of suspicion in terms of why the numbers are lower compared to what has happened last year. Some people might have said, oh, it's because your campaigns have been ineffective. But it's a good thing that you are suspecting that something could be off with that. But I was asking in terms of, if you had any, when you say you want fatalities to reduce, if you have any ceiling by which you say it means that, you know, our campaigns have not been effective enough, let us do more in that regard, or what more can we do? Do you have any such numbers by which you say, no, this is totally unacceptable for this year, this is where we're looking to stop at the maximum?
So at the NCDC, we have a set of indicators. We have a set of outbreak indicators that we call the composite indicators. So it encompasses the number of healthcare worker infection that has been detected, the number of suspected cases that has been detected, the number of deaths. So the key indicators that we use to monitor the outbreak. For the 2021 response, we have not been able to reach that the threshold that would lead to the trigger that would trigger the emergency. Aside from now that we are having healthcare worker infection, like we said, these are numbers that will be determined by the index of suspicion at the lower levels. Because if we are not testing, we're not looking for those cases and finding them. There's no how we know what is going on in the communities. It's only when we test and then find those cases, isolate them and manage them properly, that we can say, okay, we've been able to detect so numbers and we have been able to prevent so number of deaths. So we have a set of composite indicators that we use to monitor those cases weekly.
Okay, so let me ask whether, you know, how your collaborative efforts is going with the states. I imagine that you have a surveillance system set up with them. How is that working?
So our role is to support the states in the response. Like I earlier said, we have outlined key activities that the states should carry out for this season. The most important among them is to intensify surveillance, to increase the detection. Because if you detect early, you can prevent the deaths. For now, we provide that off-site support and then on-site support for the states that currently have an active outbreak. So that's been working perfectly fine with us. We also have NCDC state teams that are domiciled at the state level. In all the states, we have state surveillance officers that also support the state team in carrying out surveillance activities. We liaise with our treatment centers for the management of those cases. We also liaise with the infection prevention and control focal persons at the state level. We support them with logistics for the response, and the state also does some form of procurement at that lower level. But they are responsible for coordinating at the state level. What we do is to support, and if there's an emergency, we deploy teams to ensure that the coordination, that the response is well coordinated and that the Emergency Operations Center is activated, and it involves both the Ministry of Environment, Ministry of Agri, and all the partners and stakeholders that needs to be on the table.
Okay, I'm going to ask you to stay with us. We'll take a break at this point. When we come back, we will come back to continue the conversation. Please stay with us. Well, we're still talking about the prevention and detection of Lassa fever. It's the season. So far, we understand that there are 434 cases and 80 fatalities. We're speaking with Chioma Dan Wanfo, who is an epidemiologist and incident manager and also of the National Lassa Fever Technical Working Group in the NCDC. I'm just wondering if there have been any benefits so far with COVID. I mean, the emergence of, I don't want to say benefits, but I mean, if there have been any advantages, the fact that we've had to manage a pandemic in the last 1 year, apart from testing centers, which have gone up slightly, have there been any other advantages that this has conferred in terms of being able to manage and detect Lassa fever?
Yes, there has been. So there have been lots of lessons learned from the ongoing pandemic, and we are still learning. Aside from the testing centers, currently all the states in Nigeria have treatment centers. So this means an isolation centers. So this means that if there is any case of Lassa, they can quickly be isolated and managed at the state level. Also, capacity building. The state surveillance officers have built lots of capacity. Their confidence has also improved in the coordination of response. In the past, when we have 1 or 2 cases of Lassa fever in some states, I mean, they'll be running helter-skelter. But now I can confidently say that with the activation of EOCs, with the establishment of EOCs in all the states and with the capacity building, our state teams are now more confident and more equipped to respond to any infectious disease. One of the key gains of this of the pandemic has been in infectious prevention and control. We've been able to train thousands of healthcare workers on IPC. So this has also led to reduction in healthcare-associated infection. Unfortunately, we are having this now, but we cannot overemphasize the need for training and retraining. For the IPC, we also have the online model where healthcare workers can access this training online, because the infection prevention and control measure cuts across board. So we've been able to gain the gains of COVID for not just Lassa, but for other infectious disease. The other aspect is on the electronic reporting using our SOMAS. So we have been able to also deploy to all the states. So now we have real-time reporting. There have been lots of gains from the COVID outbreak and COVID pandemic response and counting. And I can confidently say that the state teams are much more equipped to fight any infectious disease better than they were before the pandemic.
Well, you're sitting on the hot seat now, and I think that seat is going to remain hot for the rest of the dry season as we monitor what happens with Lassa fever. We wish you all the very best. Chioma Dan Wanfo is an epidemiologist and incident manager, National Lassa Fever Technical Working Group at the NCDC. Thank you for coming on Sunrise Daily this morning.
Thank you for having me.
Sunrise Daily continues in a moment with another topic which will be of interest to Lagosians. But who knows what other states will be able to learn from this? Please stay with us.
We're at advanced stage at enacting what we call the Lagos Monthly Tenancy agreements. And what do we mean by this? The Lagos Monthly Tenancy Scheme is a scheme where we're trying to develop with some of our financial institutions to be able to have a pool of funds where beneficiaries that are current tenants that are living in houses, in flats, but who are challenged to pay a yearly rent. You will be able to approach this scheme, and this scheme will be able to help you pay your 1 year rent for your landlord and ensure that you don't come cap in hand to borrow. And we'll now look at your own monthly salary, your monthly income, and you will now be repayment on a monthly basis based on that scheme. Your landlord will be happy because he has met his own scheme. You will also be happy. You don't need to run to an uncle, to an aunt, for you to make your yearly rent.
Well, you heard that. And a number of people are not hearing it for the first time. Earlier this year, I remember the former governor of Lagos State and Minister of Works and Housing said, and I quote, "In a society where we are asking people who receive their incomes at the end of the month in arrears to bring 3 years' rent in advance, there is an issue." Maybe that is why the Lagos State government is looking at this now, from what you have heard from Dr. Sanwo-Olu. But right now with us in the studio is his special advisor on housing, Toke Benson Awoyinka. Thanks for joining us this morning.
Thank you and good morning.
Well, it must be very exciting talking about this, but Lagos State government, as the governor said now, recently launched a 5 billion naira monthly house rent payment scheme. What does that mean?
So we've sat down, we've looked at it, we've juggled numbers, we've done so much. And I tell people that government has a place to protect the people. And part of the things we want to do to protect the people is also meet them halfway. So this monthly tenancy scheme, it's a scheme with the private sector, whereby a pool of funds is pulled together, and we use that to augment the rent for people. So like the governor said, or like you said, I get my salary in arrears after working for 1 month. And then I'm asked by my landlord to pay 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, depending on where I live in Lagos. And as you know, there's a Lagos State tenancy law that stipulates that rent must be collected on an annual basis. And when Governor Fashola did this, it was at that time when we had landlords and agents asking for rents for 3-4 years. And he was able to enforce it. And this time around, we're not going into the law. We're actually doing a scheme, a government policy. That pool of funds is pulled together by the private sector at very, very minimal rates, nothing compared to the 30-28% rate that people pay right now to get loans. So if I say, Ayo, approach your bank, get a loan for maybe 3-4 million, and then they tell you it's 2.5% flat. At the end of the year, after 12 months, you pay 30%. But this particular scheme is government talking to the financial sector and saying, look, we have a social investment program here. We need to get a pool of funds together. We need to augment people's rents. We pay the landlords upfront. So I know landlords had been agitating. Oh, Lagos State government didn't build our houses for us. They cannot enforce this. They cannot do this. They can't do that. Which was
the argument they put forward when that law came from,
Exactly, in 2012 as well. But as time goes by, people get used to these things. Everywhere else in the world, you pay rent monthly. Nowhere else tells you to bring that rent 1 year, 2 years. It is something that we all need to get used to, work our psyches around it and think that, oh yes, the government is actually doing something correctly. So how does it work? The pool of funds come together at very minimal rates, comparable to whatever is obtainable in the market now. The landlord gets paid upon verification. Everything we're doing is upon verification. The landlord gets paid a yearly rent. Then the tenant pays through his salaries or his income a monthly deductible, and a minimum monthly deductible, which must not be more than 33.3% of his rental income, of his income per month. So it's something that I think is sustainable. It's something that I think the governments elsewhere, I mean, in Nigeria, should also look at doing. Well, maybe it's only in Lagos where you have people paying 1 month, 1 year, 2 years, and Abuja. But it's something that I think is very, very laudable. It's something that a lot of thought process has gone into. And I know that definitely people will applaud it as soon as it begins.
I hope this also factors in a situation where someone didn't have a job, gets a job, and then maybe someone loses a job in the process. How is that factored in?
When I was a young girl, I worked for an insurance company, and I learned a lot about insurance. So that's where insurance comes in. Elsewhere all over the world as well, people lose jobs on a daily basis. People get their jobs back on a daily basis. So we're looking at the insurance companies. We're having them write a rental income policy for us. We're having them come up with something that is going to fit that market as well. So when you lose your job, for instance, abroad, when we pay for rent, we have something called the security deposit. The security deposit is that deposit that you pay before you go into that tenancy, maybe 1 or 2 months rent. You pay that, and it's a down payment that is held by the landlord. So when you default on your payment, or when you're late on your payment, something kicks in. And that usually is done by the insurance companies. So it's not something we want to worry our heads about. It's something that the insurance companies need to look into and say, okay, we have that policy where we can also augment that part of it for you. And everything in life, there's a risk. There's a risk factor in everything. When you get a normal loan in the bank, there's also the risk of you defaulting. So in everything in life, there's a risk.
Is that also? I'm trying to wrap my head around what you just said now. I mean, is that also included in the 33.3% of the
Everything is included in the 33.3%. So we did a simulation for part of our process, and we looked at somebody who is earning or who has to pay a rent of 1 million naira per annum. After all said and done, the insurance, the admin charge, the agency charge, the legal charge, everything put into, and the cost of that fund as well. The tenant pays 98,000 naira back on a monthly basis, and for a yearly rent, he pays at the end of the rental period of 12 months 1,150,000 naira. And he pays just 98,000 naira per month.
I'm doing a little math now.
So it comes to about 14 or less percent.
But that's that. The annual, minimum wage. I don't know, is that factored in any way? The minimum wage is 360,000 per annum.
36,000 naira per month, right? Or how much is it?
30,000 naira.
30,000 naira, and that's 360,000 naira per annum. Definitely will not get a house of 1 million naira. Okay. Probably get a house of like 100 or 120,000 naira per annum. So do that math and see, he probably pays less than 15,000 naira a month.
All of this is for the formal sector.
Yes.
Those who have regular jobs and all of that. The moratorium that you talked about, the insurance coverage, for how long is that person covered?
It's a yearly rent. So it's a yearly insurance scheme.
Okay.
It has to be yearly. Because what the scheme does is that the scheme pays the landlord on a yearly basis. So that insurance is there for that 1 year. And I say it's a win-win situation. The landlord goes away with his money because the landlords are the ones who have been screaming, oh my goodness, Lagos State government is coming here, coming to bring down wielding the big stick. We're not wielding no big stick. We're just trying to help the citizenry when it comes to rental payments.
Okay. That's, as I said, that's for the formal sector. Is the informal sector in any way covered here?
Oh, definitely. The informal sector would definitely come in, but we want to start off with the formal sector. As you know, Lagos has over 20 million people, and I can say the workforce in Lagos State is probably, at least formally, at least 10 million. So if we can get that 10 million into that rental scheme bucket, then we can move to the informal sector. The informal sector I'm very passionate about the informal sector. The informal sector will have to deal with through the associations, through the unions, and something we all know called the BVN. So everybody, including that pepper seller out there, the orange seller, has a bank account. He recharges his phone on that bank account. He does so much transfers on that bank account, even through his phone. So with the BVN, everybody has a record. Everybody's traceable. So it's just a matter of pre-qualification. If I can pre-qualify you, and I know that, like you said, that man on the minimum wage of 360,000 naira per annum has that income coming in every month of 30,000 naira, and he has to pay 10,000 naira in rent. But because the landlord is asking for maybe 200 and something thousand or 150,000, he finds it difficult to put that bulk payment down. What we do is kick in that scheme. He pays maybe 10,000 naira per month, and he's good to go. He becomes that tenant. He has that liberty of moving into that home that he wants to move into. Okay. So when we look at the studies, a lot of people, young people, work on the island, work in Ikeja, but they live very, very far away. I look at it through the traffic and transportation system as well. So everybody drives down to the island, going one way every day. Whereas these young people have very good jobs on the island. Or my driver also lives on the mainland, but he picks me up on the island. There is nothing stopping him from getting a home somewhere suitable for him on the island instead of all of us going that way. I guarantee him, because I know you need a job guarantee thing to get on the scheme. I guarantee him he's in the informal sector. But I have to guarantee him. He's guaranteed through his bank account or his BVN, and then we have his record in the system. So for the informal sector, I think that will come in. The risk is minimal compared to the formal sector.
One would expect that a lot of thinking has gone into this.
Oh, most definitely. And there's still more thinking going into it.
This thinking definitely includes this informal sector bit that you're talking about.
Most definitely.
What happens when the landlord decides to increase rents and the salary has not been increased?
So we've been thinking about it. People have come to us. Why don't you aggregate rents in areas of Lagos? And people tell you, if you go to Southeast London, I don't know about what their rental income is or what the rents are. Go to Southeast London or go to Northwest London. You go on a particular street or a particular district, you know that the rent cannot be more than this. When you go to the Southeast, the rent cannot be more than that. But guess what? The minute we're able to gather all this data and put all these people in this system, it becomes very, very difficult for indiscriminate rental increase. So somebody on CMD Road, number 1 CMD Road, his home is going for 800,000, for instance, and somebody at number 10 CMD Road is going for 1.2 million. I would go for the man with 800,000. The demand for the man with 800,000 is going to push back the other man who is asking for 1.2 million.
You don't forget
so it is market forces.
There are facilities to consider.
Oh, most definitely. Guess what? One of the things we're also thinking about is that before we can get that landlord on that scheme, your house must be in fit and habitable condition. So all those things also factor into what we're doing.
Oh, wait, slow down. So there is a plan to ensure that landlords have certain minimum requirements in the homes before they can come into this scheme.
Exactly. We were talking before we came on air, and you asked me, how's this going to work? And I said, government is a two-way street. If I do my part and you play your part, these things would work. A lot of people come to us on a daily basis. The landlord or the developer has collected money from 200 and something people, whereas he only has 15 units of homes to let or to sell. But because we're also complacent and think that, oh, he's gotten away with it. Nobody gets away with a crime. Nobody gets away with a crime. So if you want to let out a property, that property must be in a fit and habitable condition.
Quickly, does this also include all those agency fee, agreement fees?
Everything is embedded in that 14.5%.
Interesting. If
it comes to 14.5%.
Well, we could go on and on about it, but just before I let you go, I'm just wondering. You have talked about the personal economies of people, and all of that. Do the companies where these people also work, do they have a role to play?
Most definitely. So we have something we call the Lagos Homes Board in Lagos State Government. And what they do is they sell off our Lagos Homes like the one we just commissioned, the 774 units that Mr. Governor commissioned a few days ago. So what we do is a pre-qualification process, okay? And in that pre-qualification process, we make sure that you have that income is constant, and we follow that trail and make sure that before you qualify for whatever you want to qualify for, you have a job, you have an income. It doesn't have to be a 9-to-5 job. You have an income traceable. And we have done this since the days of Governor Fashola. So it's not something that is undoable like people think. I'm sure the day when the Governor Fashola said, right now in Lagos, you can only pay a yearly rent. People went up in arms. People said, no, it's not possible. We cannot do it. But we did it, and we're doing it today.
But sometimes, you know, it's the enforcement that is the problem. The complicity.
The people. So when we know that there's a law or there's a government policy on what we are supposed to do, it is our responsibility to make sure that it works. And it affects our daily lives. Once there's a law in place, anything contrary to what the law says is an offense.
Okay, just one. Again, for you, I mean, you may have to do some more research because we can only do so much within a short time as this. So the way it works is, when you want to get a house,
yes,
you go to the house that you want to get. Then you take a loan from the bank and you pay the
No.
Okay.
When you want to get a house, you identify that property that you want to live in.
Okay.
You apply through this Lagos State monthly rental scheme. The scheme makes sure that there's actually really a home or a building that you want to rent. Make sure that everything that is decent about human living is obtainable in that property. Then it kicks in. They verify your income and make sure that, oh, you have an income, you can afford this. After your 33%, you can still live, work, and play. And then this rental scheme kicks in. The scheme pays off your landlord on that monthly
so
tenancy
the scheme
date.
pays to the
Pays
landlord.
to the landlord,
Okay.
doesn't pay to you.
Are coppers factored in?
Everybody is factored in.
How?
Because coppers earn money. They have an income. Like I said, that man moving from Ikeja all the way to the island every money doesn't have to do that anymore. The problem with him is he doesn't have that bulk fund to take that house, to rent that home. But when he joins that scheme, he doesn't have to look at that bulk money he needs to put down anymore, as long as there's an income, verifiable income.
Well, as I said, there is so much to unpack in this conversation, and there is so much that we can do within the short time we have had talking to Toke Benson Awoyinka, who is Special Advisor to the Lagos State Governor on Housing. It's been a pleasure talking to you this morning, and we can only wish you all the best.
You're very welcome. Thank you very much.
All right.
And I hope you're going to join the scheme as well.
Well, I don't know. I have to talk to my employer. All right, we'll be back after now to take on another issue for the day. Do stay with us.
Will you be traveling during these festivities? Will you be using the roads? Well, we're asking questions this morning of how you're going to be doing that safely. And the agency, which is responsible for ensuring that you're able to do that safely, is here represented this morning by no other than the Chief Executive Officer and Corps Marshal of the Federal Road Safety Corps. Dr. Babuyi Oyeyemi, welcome to Sunrise Daily this morning.
Thank you very much. Good morning.
Good morning. Our statistics so far are not very good. For when we look at road safety, or at least safety on our roads. We understand that figures from agencies put Nigeria's road casualty average at 33.7 per 100,000 people annually. We also understand that that translates to about 5,539 deaths in 2013, 4,430 fatalities in 2014. It goes up. It keeps going up. Let me take the last two. 5,181 in 2018 and 5,483 in 2019. Not very pretty figures, you must admit. So what are we doing this year? Because we know that this is one time that our roads are going to be very busy. What extra measures are we putting in place this year to ensure that we do not see this high number of casualties and fatalities? as we go into the festive season?
Oh, thank you. Good morning. The figure you reel out, from the professional perspective, is not so frightening. You are talking about looking at a population of 203 million to a road network of 204,000 kilometers and vehicular density of 12.5 million. When you look at the population of 203 to something of 6,000, slightly less, it's not so frightening. But again, it shows the realities. These figures you've mentioned now, they are lives that have been lost. The question is, what do we need to do, or what are we doing to be able to just ensure that we have what we call an acceptable death rate? And
Our death rates are very acceptable. I was just wondering.
look, you see, if you are talking even about ambitious zero death, you cannot. Even in developed countries, people die in road traffic. If you have observed what happened in about 3 countries recently, 50 people die in one crash. Look at what happened in Ghana. It still just happened early this week in some countries. Nigeria is not so frightening to that level. The only thing is that which we are battling with has to do with crashes at night from 9:10 till about 5 a.m. Most of the crashes is within the range of 12 midnight to 4:30. And with the fundamental issues, you cannot restrict movement of people. You can only give an advisory notice that people should be wary of driving at night because of so many factors. But it's not so alarming to that level. But if we can curtail the issue of crashes between 12 and 4:30 a.m., I think we'll be in a better state. What are we doing? The critical issue has to do with the violation by the trailers that carries cattle, and they now put human beings on top. Then the body chemistry, you cannot cheat it. By the time it's too free, fatigue sets in. They lose they lose the control of the vehicle. The last ones we raised alarm early this year, which were able to curtail 27, 26, 25 in one crash. There were 3 crashes that were recorded by 60. That was why I had to tour the northwestern part of the country to appeal to His Eminence the Sultan, the governor of Sokoto State, Kebbi State, all these axes Zamfara, to appeal to them so that the religious leaders can talk to them. And we got results. But the issue is that we still need to do more to have a permanent solution in respect of this excessive loading and movement at night to curtail this. But in daytime, I think, I must tell you again, in the urban areas, there are more crashes of recent, like Lagos, Abuja. Kano is doing well now. So, but if you look at all this, if you can have a collective efforts in ensuring a safe travels, compliance to road traffic rules and regulations, I think we get it right. And for the festive period now, I think we've done well with all the stakeholders. We must commend the government. A lot of federal roads are undergoing major rehabilitations that have been on the road for some days now. And the construction companies have been guided to ensure that they manage the traffic where the construction is going on, display appropriate warning signs, and let there be movement. And for the patrol teams too, this is not an era of booking, it's an era of ensuring that the road is free, the obstructions are removed. Then
they have that instruction. Now, this is not
already.
An era of bookings.
No.
This is an era of
except if you are driving under the influence of alcohol, you cannot move again. You know, we appreciate our stakeholders. We have digital equalizers. We've procured about, early in the year, made sure we have about 25,000 equalizers, so which we are deploying. Then the mobile court comes in. But with the sensitization we've done so far and the level of awareness, I believe we are going to have a better than even last year. That was a major success. What is required is the support of the road users to comply with the traffic rules and regulation. And one area we normally have during the festive period has to do with the private drivers. They are more involved in crashes. There's a difference between urban driving and highway driving. Urban driving, you do school runs. From the house, you drop your ward in the school. Then you go you drop your wife, or from there you go to the office. When you close, you go back. It's different from highway. Many families have experienced crashes because they don't have the experience of how to drive on the highway. After 10, 20 kilometers, fatigue sets in. and distraction comes a lot in respect of this. So more or less, I will continue to advocate for attitudinal change on the part of road users.
No, but when you mean private drivers, you don't mean, you mean those who are driving their families?
Somebody like you.
Okay, not commercial drivers.
Yeah.
I know that there has been a number of moves with commercial drivers in the past. You've had sensitization activities around parks. You've also insisted on the use of speed limiting devices. How successful would you say that has been?
It's been a success. I was still in Kano last Monday for the end of the year flag off with the governor of Kano State. And we raised this issue. And my strategy session to the commanding officers, all commercial drivers must have the speed limiting device installed. Most of the crashes are speed related. 50%. We must do something to cut down this. Because where we're not talking about private drivers now is because a commercial driver carries about 10, 15 vehicles. A luxury bus carries about 45, 50. If anything happens, if there's a mishap, those lives are lost or maimed or injured or confined permanently to a wheelchair. But for a private vehicle, you are looking at about 1 or 2 or 3 or a family. But even that is even dangerous. But when it comes to figures, we need to focus more on commercial drivers, and especially the unions also agree that their drivers will not be allowed to drive under the influence of drugs and alcohol, because that is another key issue in respect of that. And that is where we are focused our campaign for the end of the year. We believe with a positive attitudinal change on the part of road users, 2022 is around the corner.
Some people will say that it is easier to speak with commercial drivers, especially those who are organized. But there are lots of them who are not organized. Those who pick passengers from illegal motor parks. We've seen a lot of, let's say, vehicles. And I wonder sometimes if those vehicles, especially the ones that are not buses, they're like cars. They usually ply maybe Abuja, Nasarawa, Abuja, Kaduna, those kinds of routes. I don't think those vehicles have speed limiting devices, do they?
I agree with you that the organized transport sector, OTS, they are organized and they've complied. They are under the Road Transport Safety Standardization Scheme. But all those ones that just are trying to make quick money or using the company's vehicle when the companies have closed for the year, those are where the problem lies. Some of them, I agree with you, they don't have speed limiting devices. But when we stop them, we impound them. And those are the ones that frequently breaks down on the highway when they are traveling, because those vehicles are not well maintained. But we continue to do our best in respect of that. And again, if you listen to what the unions, URTW, RTA, NATO have said, that they discourage road passengers from standing by the roadside to be picked because there's so much risk involved. The unions cannot account for that. But if you go to the motor park, you have the passengers manifest. This is recorded, and they can track the drivers. They know the routes they take. But when you just stand by the roadside, you are endangering yourself to the risk on the highway because you don't know the driver. The driver is not recorded. You don't have anything to prove. Then anything can happen. So we use this medium again to appeal to Nigerians not to stand by the road and be looking for a free ride. In the era of this kidnapping and strangling people anyhow, people should go to the registered motor parks or the organized transport sector and to be loaded. You see, if you look at it at the end of the day, it's a matter of penny wise, pound foolish. If they are charging 10,000 in the parks and then somebody wants to carry for 7,000, so you want to risk your life with 3,000, I think we need to be more sensible this time around. It's a matter of risk factor, and the burden is on you for you to take for the choice. We need to be careful.
Well, safety on the roads now is like it's going beyond just vehicle and people getting, how will I put it now, people just driving safely. It's now also about security on the road.
Yeah.
How is that impacting the work of the FRSC?
I think so far so good. Throughout the country, everything has been, we've not had any major casualty. I must thank the Chief of Defense Staff, the Inspector General of Police, and the Director General of the Department of State Services, and the Commandant General of Civil Defense. We've had maximum support from all the security agencies. So I think we're on course. We're on course on this. And recently, if you remember, just on the 16th of October, we inaugurated the body cameras. And I've authorized the deployment to 20 states now. Body cameras makes the patrol team to be seen anywhere they are, once there's 3 or 4G network. And with the 5G coming now, I think we're on top of using technology. The focus now is using technology to drive road safety management and administration in Nigeria. So with body camera, we know if anything happens or about to happen to our patrol teams, we know what to do. And we have set up the rapid response system in the HQ and other locations. So peradventure, there's emergency. Within fraction of seconds, we know the team to be deployed for rescue. But so far, I think we are free of all this. We've not had casualties, except when staff in commercial vehicles are traveling and they are kidnapped. But again, the DSS has been so helpful and the police in respect of this. So far, so good, I think, with the current situations, we're on top of the situation.
So the work of the FRSC hasn't been threatened as a result of the security situation in many parts of the country. I'm wondering now, in terms of emergencies, because some people would say that part of the reason why perhaps our figures, you say it's not so alarming, but
no.
Why
5,000 plus.
Why our figures don't look so good? Because, I mean, 33 deaths out of 100,000 to other countries that we compare with is still quite high, especially in low and mid-income countries. It's not exactly the best figures, let me put it that way. Part of it is as a result of emergency response not coming on time, or the fact that medical facilities are few and far between, especially when you look at the highways. I know that the FRSC tried to, bridge that gap by setting up emergency response units in
zebras.
Yes, in different parts of the country and on the highways as well. How effective would you say those that facility is, or those facilities are? Because in some parts of the country, it looked like initially they looked pretty active, they looked brand new, they looked sharp, but these days they look like a shadow of themselves.
No. I think we are doing well when it comes to emergency response, or let me say under the National Network on Emergency Road Services. We just took delivery of some ambulances and I've just set up more zebras. I think we're in the critical corridors now. Don't forget, lifespan of a vehicle like that, of our vehicles, is 3 years, and we need to reflate. And we're on course in that one. With the capital votes, we've been able to procure more vehicles. Those vehicles that are aged, we are replacing them gradually. We've just released all these vehicles this week. And I believe for emergency services, we are doing well. The World Bank mode is that maximum 15 minutes. In cities like Abuja and Lagos, I think we are doing far much better like that. Then on Lagos, Ibadan too, we are doing well. So then we've just, to the northeastern part of the country, I've just authorized establishments of some zebras. Those are the ambulance points we're talking about. So we have them all over the country like that. But on emergency, you must give kudos to FRSC for the efforts we are making in respect of this. It can be better I'm expecting more funds from the government intervention fund. So that means almost all the major highways now, we're going to have ambulance services deployed.
Let's go to Lagos now. I understand my colleague Ayo has questions for you.
Thank you, Malkwe. Doc, just first of all, a reaction to one question, one issue you raised the other time about the number of crashes at night between the hours of, say, 10 p.m. and, say, 4 a.m. or thereabouts. One of the, findings I made recently talking about this is that some of these crashes are as a result of the use of high beams on the highways. And in checking, I found out that we have some regulations that is supposed to be enforced. I don't know how else to put that. That, you are not supposed to use high beams at certain times or in certain distances between one vehicle and the other. So I'm wondering, is there an enforcement strategy for the use of high beams? Because high beams in someone's eyes on an oncoming vehicle, that's a potential accidents in the making.
I agree with you. The law does not allow you, the traffic laws and regulations, especially the National Road Traffic Regulations, does not allow you to add to the beams provided by the manufacturers. The manufacturers have seen what is expected to be used. The problem is that the mentality of our drivers, and it's part of the operations order we have given to the commands, to the patrol teams, even in daytime now, that all those extra lights be removed. There's no law that allows you to add anything to what the manufacturers have designed for the vehicle. The major problem with these drivers is that they're having sight problems, and there is an act of wickedness and stupidity on the part of those drivers to add additional lights. I agree with you, and that is the sustainability, sustained enforcement will eliminate this. Thank you.
Perhaps this is also education on our part. Just this one, we just received a mail from Philip, who says he boarded a bus and Traco from Makurdi to Enugu. The company is owned by Enugu state government, and such some of the vehicles that are government owned carry government number, which is in the green. While in transit, officers of road safety corps that were on routine check on the Benue section close to Enugu stopped our bus and insisted on charging the driver to a mobile court, which was a few meters away, alleging that his bus is carrying a green number plate. Is that is that something you want to speak to?
Well, I think the patrol team, I must be honest, the patrol team was wrong. Government vehicles, government transport-owned companies, by the regulation, are authorized to use the green number plates, and it's in the vehicle identification code book. So I think I must be frank, the patrol team was wrong. And if the driver was then prosecuted, then we have to look for a way to resolve the matter. I must stand on the point of what the law says. For government-owned commercial transport companies, the law allows them to have the government number plates for proper identification.
Well, we have also someone writing here in Abuja, where we both live. This one is from Chukwenike Okonkwo Bruno. He says he needs to ask two questions. Why isn't the Road Safety Corps doing anything about commercial drivers in Abuja that allow two persons in a passenger seat, that is beside the driver's seat, meant for one person? That's one. And why isn't the Road Safety Corps doing anything about commercial motorcyclists in Abuja riding without that side or rear mirrors, both of them?
I think in the first instance, the issue of overloading by commercial vehicles, we've been working on it, but they're like monsters. They're defiant, but we continue to sustain this. There's a high level of lawlessness among the commercial drivers. Like the guy said in FCT, it is not, the law does not allow you to carry two passengers in the front row with the driver. It is not correct, but we continue to sustain the enforcement. As regards the Okada,
would you say that is it because the penalties are not steep enough, or because some people
the penalties the fines are very low, and we've advocated. I think we are reviewing the national road traffic regulations now. Before the middle of next year, the revised one will be out. The penalties are not serving as deterrence. That is one issue. When you ask a driver to just 2,000 for some of these offenses, the man will pay as they commit the offense. So the only thing is to take such a person to mobile court. Maybe we can press further to get him jailed for a period. But he's right. But we continue to sustain the efforts. That is one major problem. And don't forget the resolution of the National Council on Transportation that requested all the state governments to have high-capacity buses for transportation. If all the states can imbibe in this, if there are buses that can carry passengers, people will not do that. So
high-capacity buses will be?
Those luxury buses that can carry about 50, 60 at a time. So when they move at the various bus stops, they pick passengers and disembark. So, but when you don't have that, the issue is that there is a challenge in transportation system which must be addressed.
Especially here in Abuja.
And other states too. Lagos is doing well. I can see Kaduna is doing well now, and Kano. But we need to do more than that. We need to provide effective, efficient, high-capacity transportation system for the citizens. That's the summary. If that is done, you will not experience this.
What about the motorcyclists, especially the ones that do courier?
No, courier. To a certain level, they comply. They wear safety helmets. They do everything. You must give it to them. But it is those private and commercial ones. And if you observe during the news yesterday, about 1,000 plus were destroyed after impoundment by the road traffic services in conjunction with the police and other security agencies. I think what we should advocate for is for the lead agency to continue to sustain the level of enforcement. There are monsters, but the more you sustain it, then the more you're able to curtail it.
Well, we have to thank you so much for sharing your thoughts with us this morning.
Thank you.
We wish Nigerians and yourself, your service as well, an accident-free season, especially as we go into the festive period. And we hope that, the death rate really comes, crashing down when we are totally done with this season and even beyond. Thank you so much for sharing your thoughts with us this morning. We've been speaking with Dr. Boboye Oyeyemi, who is the Corps Marshal and Chief Executive of the Federal Road Safety Corps. We have a few mails from you, and we're not going to go without taking these mails. Louis Afolabi, talking about monthly house rent, says, time will tell how far this novelty from Lagos State government can go. Just wondering how the state government wants to take charge of rent of housing, whose production is highly deregulated. Is Lagos State in control of the cost of cement, iron rods, or even ordinary sand taken from the state-owned quarry? How easy and affordable is the cost of land in Lagos State land schemes? How cheap and easy is it for the masses to access mass housing produced by the Lagos State government? How affordable are the rents charged in those state-owned housing schemes to the masses in general? So many questions begging for answers. That's from Louis Afolabi.
Well, Olagunju Oladile is interested in the same issue. Seemingly, this scheme applies only to residential tenants. Can this scheme also be applicable for commercial rentals under the same conditions?
And Olorun Lobadeni says, talking about the same scheme, our problem is that in this part of the world, our problem in this part of the world has always been implementation. As laudable and commendable as this program is, the major stumbling block will be the landlords. Even the 1 year rent they collect in Lagos is not different from the days they used to collect 2 to 3 years rent. The government should focus more on making building materials very affordable. This is the only lasting solution. Well, that's from Olorun Loba Adeni.
And on containing Lassa fever, Festus Akimboyewa says, sad that Lassa fever continues to claim lives in our country. Since Lassa fever is seasonal, governments at all levels must be proactive and have annual rodent control programs that will reduce the population of rodents in our country.
I'm trying my best not to make a joke of that, but it will be interesting what would the rat population will say about that. Thank you so much for watching this beautiful Friday morning. I hope to see you in the evening with even more interesting interviews. Thank you for watching. I'm Maokbe Ogun Yusuf.
Who knows? Maybe the National Assembly is looking at it already. Remember, we had that conversation around the livestock population. But again, that's beside the point. I'm Ayo Makinde. Have a wonderful rest of your day.